Right now, we have with us former city commissioner, longtime CEO of Goodwill Industries, local musician, and now he adds another, oh, and also local cable television show host, and now he adds another title to it, and that's author Bob Holderbaum. Bob, good morning. Nice to see you.
Hi, Jim. Good to be here.
My goodness, you've been basically kind of in semi-retirement. Have been going around performing music
Yes.
a lot,
A lot.
like a few times a week and stuff. But kind of laid that aside and decided to try your hand at writing a book. It's called Trestle of Death: Murder Unpunished. And is it you actually? I was reading the article in today's Battle Creek Shopper, page 12 and 13, by the way. Shelley did a nice job on that.
Yes.
You actually kind of dabbled in writing a little bit a while back and threw it in the drawer, and that was that until now.
Yes.
So what spurred you on to deciding to sit down and actually finish one off and submit it for publication?
Well, as I indicated, and I think Shelley had a lot of it in the article, after my former wife died, and then the file came out with all the facts of the case, which I knew that Wayne Watson had been killed, but didn't know how, didn't know anything about the case. And my son knows I'm a true crime aficionado, and he offered me the file, as it were, and I read it, and I said, this is a story that needs to be told. So really it was, I will call it a conscience-driven book. I said this story needs to be told. I never had plans to be an author. I've written this and that all my life, but this one I said, we have to do something with this.
You mentioned your former wife. The person killed was her brother?
Yes.
And so you knew of it. Now, you and your wife had separated at that time, but you knew of it, and it turns out that she was corresponding with judges over the years to try and get justice for her murdered brother. But tell us, set the scene for the murder, 1985.
Okay. It's Memorial Day weekend, Friday preceding Memorial Day weekend. Let me give you just a small piece of geography to understand it better. On the east side of Kalamazoo, and we're talking about the Edison neighborhood here, there's a railroad, and most people know the railroad goes through Kalamazoo, well, really both ways, east and west, north and south. And the railroad that goes north and south, it turns to the southeast, and at the corner of Fulford and Stockbridge, those two come to a right angle corner. And right behind that is the railroad. It's on a very high bank there, and it gets, as you go further southeast, it's even higher.
At that time, there was a giant roundhouse there on that curve there.
No, this is in a different place.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fulford and Stockbridge. I know where the roundhouse used to be. I'm trying to remember the Mill Street, and I don't remember the cross street. But
sure, but there was a lot of railroad activity there in that area, because there was a lot of industry, early industry in Kalamazoo.
Right, and the trestle sits behind an old factory building there, so it is very, very obscure. It is in no way visible from the street, and there used to be a second railroad track, or set of railroad tracks that went under that trestle back in the early 1900s, and I understand it came from Battle Creek to Kalamazoo.
Well,
so it may have been part of the interurban. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, it's very obscure, and for decades it has been kind of a shortcut between the two neighborhoods, the Edison neighborhood and the smaller area of Comstock that sits on the east side of that, and it's been also a hangout for teenagers, and you'll find a lot of litter there and that kind of thing. So that's where it happened, and it was on this weekend. You asked how. Wayne Watson worked a second shift job at GM. He lived about 3 blocks from the trestle. He came home, changed clothes, and walked down to the trestle. I talk about in the book what may or may not have been his plans that evening. And then apparently he met these 2 young men beneath the trestle. They socialized for a little while, and it went well. And then apparently there was a proposition made, and then some touching, and a fight broke out.
Oh.
And then these 2 young men beat the crap out of Wayne.
and he died, and there was a subsequent trial.
Yeah. It was complicated because these two young men left the scene. Wayne was still alive, they say. Now, one of the problems here is that all we have is their word for what happened under the trestle. But they left. They went to another party. They were very, very bloody. Made some extremely, what's the word I want here, prejudicial comments against gay people. And that was how I came to the conclusion that it was a hate crime. We didn't have hate crimes back then in 1985. That's a more recent concept. So viewing this crime through that lens has given a new, I felt, a new view of what happened. But I'm sorry, Tim.
Yeah, I was going to say, your former brother-in-law, then, Wayne,
yes.
he was a gay man,
yes,
who worked at General Motors.
Yes.
And was that widely known? Because, at that time, people kind of kept that. Did his family even know it?
Well, that's an interesting question. Very interesting. Because his partner at the time, and they had been together for 8 years, his partner told the police that they were openly gay. That's an exact quote. However, most of his family did not know, his parents especially. Now, I've heard more recently from family members, maybe they knew, but his parents were very disapproving of the LGBT lifestyle. Sorry, I'm trying to get away from that word lifestyle, but
again, this is 1985.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's a long time ago, and things were different.
They were very opposed to that, and his father especially did not know about it until Wayne was killed, and then he found that out, and it was a tremendous crush on him.
Things in 1985. I'm trying to think. The AIDS epidemic kind of hit in 1981, and it was about 1985 that it was really becoming in the forefront of the press, and the government trying to do whatever they could, and people were trying to find a cure and a vaccine, and all these warnings. Do you think it had something to do with? I'm trying to remember back then, but I'm thinking that it did create some anti-gay sentiment. Just because of that. I mean, people demonize the gay population because of the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah. I spend a considerable amount of the book discussing that, because of the two young men that beat on Wayne that night, one pleaded down, and he did do a small amount of jail time. The other guy is the one that went to trial, and he was acquitted. And there are a whole lot of reasons why that happened, and I don't have time to go into those, and we want people to read the book.
Sure,
anyway.
That's what the book is for.
That's right. But it was complicated, I will say that. It was complicated, and I'm not sure, honestly, that the outcome could have gone any differently. However, right to your question, the assistant prosecutor felt that the AIDS, HIV era maybe had something to do with the fact that the other guy was acquitted, and the fact that there were some statements made by the jurors that were quoted in the newspaper articles, extensive newspaper articles, I might add, that indicated there might have been some prejudice there. There were groups, LGBTQ, well, we didn't have the Q back then, civil rights that protested this. That's all in the book. And they claimed that the man who was acquitted because of the jury being anti-gay. Now, whether that's true or not, the reader will have to just read it and make up his or her own mind. I don't have an opinion on that, but it played a part.
You mentioned a lot of newspaper articles, and that's kind of a good thing, because with the outcome of this trial, or the acquittal, there really aren't a lot of court records. Did you find very many court records?
Well, it's interesting. The two young men had a preliminary hearing, and there is a transcript for that. The man who went to trial, because he was acquitted and there was no appeal, there was no transcript made. And I was told that I could have had a transcript, but it would cost me literally thousands of dollars.
Oh.
Wayne's sister wanted to, or was at least looking into suing civilly after the acquittal, and she was told, and this is $1985, that it would be $2,500 for a transcript. So I could have gotten one, but I don't have those kind of resources. So the newspaper articles proved to be a vital piece of this.
Yeah, was that all Kalamazoo Gazette, or were there articles in other area regional newspapers?
Well, that's a good question. I'm going to say probably 95% of them were from not only the Gazette, but from one writer at the Gazette. And I don't know if we'll have time to go into that. Her name is Rebecca Pierce, and I certainly want to give her credit. She wrote long, extensive, detailed articles about the case. There were several articles from the Free Press. In fact, there was a reporter there that I quoted pretty vitally in the book. And then there was one from the Battle Creek Inquirer, and I'm not saying that to suck up or anything, but so there were a couple of national publications too.
Bob Holderbaum is our guest this morning, author of Trestle of Death, Murder Unpunished, about a murder that happened in 1985, basically a fight involving a gay man, and he died. The two people left the scene of that accident. And was there a lot of evidence? There were no witnesses, right?
Correct.
No witnesses other than the two young people who were involved. Were you able to talk to either of them?
No. And in fact, one of them died very recently.
Oh, okay. So basically, he was acquitted. The one was acquitted. The other one pled to a lesser charge, did a little bit of time, right?
Yes.
And so really, Murder Unpunished, the subtitle of the book, and it's pretty much it. You know, a guy lost his life and nobody really paid for that.
Exactly.
Yeah. In terms of writing a book, I mean, how did you go about it? What did you have to do once you finally got it all set? And did you use like an old typewriter, or did you use a computer, or how did you work?
Okay. Well, let me take it kind of chronologically. I received this large manila envelope from my son, who had gotten that from his late mother.
Oh, okay.
From her effects. And that had all these articles and so on. And after I decided that I wanted to do something with it, he was extremely helpful in garnering information. And he went through the Freedom of Information Act, received the police reports for the case, along with a lot of photos, crime scene and others, and then just kind of weaving all of that together. And then in answer to your question, no, we have an old mainframe at home that I use. My son and wife have gone to the portable devices. I have not. I still use a flip phone. So I'm a little old-fashioned in computer terms. But
at least you didn't have to use whiteout.
That's true, yeah.
And so you get it all done, you get it to your satisfaction. Then what did you do to try and get it published?
Well, my original intent, I had done a lot of homework and a lot of research, and I know that what they call traditional publishing companies don't take on newbies like me. And to do that, you also have to have an agent, which can take a lot of time. And when I say time, I mean months or years. So I had planned on self-publishing. And sometime last fall, and I honestly don't remember all the details because I did it as a very cursory kind of thing. I got an email one day and said, if you think you'd like to write a book, send us your manuscript. And so I sent this manuscript, and in fact, I got 2 messages back that it didn't go. I thought they didn't even receive it, so I gave up. And about a month later, I get a note from Creativity Publishing, and they said, we'd like to publish your book. So wow. That's how that happened. And I had planned on doing a lot of self-promotion if I was going to do, the independent publishing. So things like contacting WBCK and other media was on my plan anyway. And since I've been in the studio before, I decided I could do it again. So, yeah. So the promoting, the marketing part of it, I'm doing a lot of that on my own.
Yeah, a murder like this, it kind of ties into so many issues in society today, a lot of parallels. And,
yes.
And a lot of your book, too, you've alluded to it, Bob, earlier, regarding jury selection and juries, and you do spend some time talking about that.
Yes. I've been on jury duty, and some people don't know this, I lived 30 years in Kalamazoo. I grew up as a kid there. My true crime affinity came from my dad's barbershop. He had crime magazines and that kind of thing, and that's how I learned to like that.
Where was the barber shop?
It was out on Douglas Avenue. It's still a very ugly, it stands in front of our house. It was built in front of our house, and it stands out very distinctively at 917 Douglas.
Which cross street?
Alamo Avenue would be
right
just
there,
a couple hundred yards away.
Right by the old Clark station.
Yes.
Which is
You know that part of town too.
Oh yeah, that was the first Meyer.
Meyer
Thrifty Acres.
Used to buy my dad cigarettes at Clark Station for like 14 cents a pack.
Oh my goodness. We were talking about the price of cigarettes this morning because this date, 1921, the first state tax cigarettes was 2 cents. We thought, well, what could they have cost? So, yeah, but no, that's very interesting. So the barber shop, hanging out in the barber shop, you were reading the true crime, and that's where you got your affinity for
Definitely,
that.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. How can we get a hold of a copy of Trestle of Death, Murder Unpunished?
Okay, it's available at Amazon.com. People have told me it's available other places, but they haven't told me where. But Amazon.com has both the paperback version and they have a couple of ebook versions.
Great. Ed, have you got any public signings or anything if we don't like to do internet ordering? Or we can...
Well, on April 29th, which is a Saturday, I'll be over in... Is it 27th? I'm sorry. The 27th, I will be over at Kazoo Books, which is on Parkview Avenue in Kalamazoo.
Okay.
And there will be several other authors there. It's not featuring me, but I will be part of that.
Well, great. We'll try to remind people about that, and we'll put the link in our article on our website so that people can just go to Amazon and get a copy of your book, Trestle of Death, Murder Unpunished. And are you working on another one? Have you got another idea?
Yes, I am.
Really?
I don't know how much time you have. A bike shop owner was killed in Kalamazoo in 1988.
Mr. O'Byrne.
Yes.
Got my first Huffy Stingray.
That's why I'm doing
right
the
there.
book, because he was very high profile. And the fact that you know his name is kind of testimony to the fact that that's going to be an interesting case. And I learned later that it took him 11 years to bring anybody to trial. And they did convict a man who's down in Coldwater. He and I are in contact. He is still protesting his innocence. And the Innocence Project is working on his behalf.
Oh, really?
So
really?
I've found that case extremely interesting.
My goodness, that is a very fascinating story. We look forward to hearing about that. And also reading your new book, Trestle of Death and Murder Unpunished, available on Amazon. Bob Holderbaum, thanks for joining us today.
You too.